Michaela Wilson straightened the papers on her desk for the third time that evening, her fingers trembling slightly despite her best efforts to appear calm. The fluorescent lights of Morrison and Associates hummed overhead, casting harsh shadows across the conference room where she'd spent the last 6 months preparing for the most important case of her young career. 24 years old, fresh off winning her first major settlement, and now she was going head-to-head with the Park Organization, one of the most powerful and feared criminal enterprises in the city, hiding behind the legitimate facade of Dohyun Development Corporation. Her cornrows, freshly done that morning, were pulled back into a neat bun that gave her an air of professionalism that sometimes felt like armor. She needed that armor now. The Henderson Heights case wasn't just another file number to her. It was about the 73 families who would be displaced if Judge Millstone ruled in favor of demolishing the low-income housing complex to make way for the Azure Sky Tower, a glass and steel monstrosity that everyone knew would be used to launder money from Park Dohyun's criminal operations. Michaela had grown up 3 blocks from Henderson Heights. Her grandmother still lived there, in a modest 2-bedroom apartment where the rent had remained affordable for nearly 30 years. "You should go home, Michaela," her colleague David called from the doorway, his voice tight with worry. "The hearing's not until 10 tomorrow. You need rest. And be careful. The Park Organization doesn't play by the rules." She glanced at her watch. 11:47 p.m. Just 15 more minutes. "I want to review the environmental impact testimony one more time." David shook his head, lowering his voice. "You know what happened to the last lawyer who challenged them. They found him in the river. Please, just watch your back." When David left, his warning echoed in the empty office. Michaela had read the police reports, the mysterious accidents, the witnesses who suddenly recanted their testimony. Park Dohyun's name never appeared in any investigation, but everyone knew the truth. He ran the largest organized crime syndicate in the city, controlling everything from the docks to construction, from gambling to protection rackets. And he didn't tolerate interference. When she left the building 20 minutes later, the parking garage was nearly empty, her Honda Civic sitting alone under a flickering light that cast dancing shadows across the concrete. She never saw them coming. One moment she was reaching for her car door, the next a cloth covered her mouth and nose, chemical sweet and suffocating. She tried to scream, tried to fight, but her limbs grew heavy. Through blurring vision, she saw men in expensive suits, not thugs, but professionals. The kind of men who made people disappear. The parking garage spun into darkness. Michaela woke to the smell of expensive cologne and the soft hum of classical music. Chopin, her muzzy brain recognized. Her head throbbed, her mouth felt like cotton, and when she tried to move, she realized her wrists were bound to the arms of a leather chair. "You're awake. Good. I was beginning to worry they'd used too much chloroform." The voice was smooth, accented, carrying the kind of casual authority that came from absolute power. Michaela forced her eyes to focus, taking in the room around her, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the glittering city skyline, minimalist furniture that screamed money, and a man standing by those windows with his back to her. When he turned, Michaela recognized him immediately from the surveillance photos she'd studied. Park Dohyun was younger than she'd imagined, 27, though he carried himself with the confidence of someone who'd ordered his first hit before he could legally drink. His features were sharp and aristocratic, his dark hair styled in that effortlessly perfect way that powerful men seem to manage. He wore a charcoal suit without a tie, the top button of his shirt undone. A thin scar traced his jawline, a reminder that his path to power hadn't been bloodless. "You," Michaela said, her voice hoarse. "You're Park Dohyun, the butcher of Riverside." His expression flickered at the nickname, the one the media had given him after the Riverside massacre 5 years ago, though nothing was ever proven. "I prefer CEO. And you're Michaela Wilson, the lawyer who signed her own death warrant by filing that injunction." Michaela's breath caught. Her heart raced and for a moment, it felt like it might burst. She tried to shuffle backwards, but her hands were bound. "You're probably thirsty. The chloroform has that effect." He moved closer with a glass of water. "Drink." She didn't answer. Her eyes darted from him to the glass and back. "I'm not here to poison you," Dohyun said. "If I wanted you dead, you wouldn't have woken up." "Don't come near me," she finally managed. He stopped, setting the glass on a side table. "I'm not going to hurt you, Ms. Wilson. That was never my intention." "Really?" "Because kidnapping someone usually doesn't end with tea and conversation." Despite her fear, Michaela felt anger rising hot in her chest. "Do you have any idea how much trouble you're in? Kidnapping a lawyer the night before a major hearing." "We'll ensure that hearing is postponed," Dohyun interrupted smoothly, returning to the window. "Which buys me time. And in my business, time is the most valuable commodity." "Your business? You mean your criminal empire?" The racketeering, money laundering, extortion. Michaela pulled against the restraints. I've spent 6 months documenting how the Azure Sky Tower is just another front for washing dirty money through legitimate construction. The FBI has copies of everything. The FBI has nothing that will stick. They've been trying to touch me for years. Dohyun's voice was cold, matter of fact. And yes, Ms. Wilson, I run the most profitable criminal organization in this city. I control the ports, the unions, half the judges, and most of the politicians. Your little case is an inconvenience, nothing more. Then why am I here? Why not just kill me like you killed Michael Chen? Something dangerous flashed in Dohyun's eyes. Michael Chen tried to steal from me. He chose his fate. You're different. You're just doing your job. Misguided, naive, but honest. That's rare enough that I'd prefer not to waste it. How noble of you. What I'm hoping for, Dohyun said, moving to a chair across from her, is that you'll understand the reality of your situation. Henderson Heights sits on property my organization needs for our operations. The Azure Sky Tower isn't just luxury housing. The substructure will house our main distribution center. The penthouses will be used for high-stakes gambling and other enterprises. This isn't negotiable. And the 73 families who live there? Just collateral damage in your criminal enterprise. They'll receive generous relocation compensation. Blood money. Dohyun's jaw tightened. You self-righteous lawyers always think everything is black and white. You have no idea how this city actually works. The park organization employs thousands of people. People who otherwise would have been left to suffer. We settle disputes that would have ended in violence. We provide order where the law fails. You provide terror. Protection rackets aren't employment. He stood abruptly, pacing. My men were supposed to eliminate you tonight. A tragic mugging, another lawyer lost to the city's crime problem. But I changed the order. The words hung in the air like a death sentence suspended. Michaela felt ice slide down her spine. Why? Because unlike most of the parasites I deal with, you actually believe in what you're doing. You took this case pro bono. You're fighting for your community. He turned to face her, something unreadable in his dark eyes. And because one of those families in Henderson Heights is your grandmother. Michaela's breath caught. You leave her alone. I'm not threatening her. I'm explaining why you're alive. Dohyun crouched down so they were eye level. You'll remain here as my guest until Judge Millstone rules in my favor. Without your testimony, he will. Then you can return to your life, and your grandmother can stay in her apartment. I'll personally ensure nothing happens to her. You expect me to believe a crime boss has a conscience? I expect you to understand that I'm offering you the only option where you both survive. His voice dropped lower, almost gentle. The men I answer to, my real partners, wanted you tortured, killed, made an example of. I convinced them that making you disappear was sufficient. Don't make me regret that decision. Michaela studied his face, seeing the truth there alongside the threat. Park Dohyun wasn't the ultimate authority. There were darker forces above him. Who are they? Your partners. People who make me look like a saint. The Yakuza clans I launder money for, the Russian bratva I move product for, the Mexican cartels whose interests I protect. Dohyun stood, straightening his suit. They don't understand mercy, Ms. Wilson. To them, you're already dead. I'm the only thing keeping that from becoming reality. A man in a dark suit appeared in the doorway, not just security, but a soldier. Heavily armed, cold-eyed, the kind of man who'd killed before and would again without hesitation. Make sure she's comfortable, Dohyun ordered. Food, water, bathroom privileges. But she doesn't leave, and she doesn't communicate with anyone. Anyone tries to breach this penthouse, you know what to do. The guard nodded silently. Dohyun gave Michaela one last look. I'm sorry it had to be this way, but in my world, mercy is the best I can offer. He strode from the room, leaving her alone with her armed guard and the glittering view of a city that suddenly felt very far away. If you're enjoying this story, don't forget to like and subscribe. We post new stories every week, so don't miss out on new updates. Michaela had been Dohyun's prisoner for 3 days, and the forced proximity had revealed the complex reality of the man who'd kidnapped her. The first day had been silent defiance. She'd refused food, refused water, refused to acknowledge his attempts at conversation. But by the second day, she'd realized that starving herself wouldn't help anyone. The penthouse was a gilded cage. Armed guards rotated shifts at every entrance. She'd watched through the windows as helicopters circled, not police, but private security patrolling the airspace. The entire floor belonged to Dohyun, and the building itself was a fortress. On the third morning, Dohyun appeared with breakfast, dismissing the guards with a gesture. He set down a tray of food that looked like it came from a five-star restaurant. You should eat. Chef Min is excellent, and refusing food won't change your situation. Michaela stared at the elaborate meal. Does he know who he's cooking for? A murderer? A crime lord? He knows I pay exceptionally well and don't ask questions. Dohyun poured coffee. And yes, before you ask, he's bound to my organization. His daughter needed medical treatment. I arranged it. Now he's loyal. You mean you own him? I mean I gave him options when the legal system failed him. His daughter would have died waiting for insurance approval. I got her into surgery within hours. Dohyun met her eyes. That's how loyalty works in my world, Ms. Wilson. Not through fear alone, but through solving problems the legitimate world ignores. Despite herself, Michaela found the answer more complex than she wanted. That doesn't excuse the violence. The people you've killed. No, it doesn't. Dohyun sat across from her, his expression unreadable. I've done things that will damn me to hell. I've ordered executions, sanctioned torture, destroyed lives. But I've also protected my territory from gangs that would be worse. I've kept children out of the drug trade. I've maintained peace between factions that would otherwise massacre each other in the streets. That's not justice, that's just controlled chaos. It's the only kind of order this city can have. He leaned back. You think the law works? Your grandmother lives in Henderson Heights because the real estate market failed her. Your legal system couldn't protect her from predatory landlords or corporate greed. So she stayed in a neighborhood my organization protects, whether she knows it or not. Michaela wanted to argue, but the words stuck in her throat. She'd seen the reality of how powerless the law was against money and influence. How many cases had she lost because the other side could afford better lawyers, could bury evidence in paperwork, could delay justice until her clients gave up? Why do you do this? She asked finally. You're clearly intelligent. You could have been anything. Why choose to be a criminal? Dohyun was quiet for a long moment. My father grew up in poverty in Seoul. Came to this country with nothing. He worked construction, saved everything, started his own small contracting business. His voice was carefully controlled. When I was 18, a local gang tried to extort protection money from him. He refused. They burned down his office with him inside. Michaela felt her anger falter. I'm sorry. Don't be. It taught me everything I needed to know about how the world really works. Dohyun's eyes were hard. The police did nothing. The legitimate business community turned their backs. So I learned a different way. By the time I was 20, I'd killed every man who had a hand in my father's death. The casual admission of murder should have terrified her. Instead, Michaela saw something she hadn't expected. Grief. Loss. A boy who'd been broken and had rebuilt himself into something deadly. The park organization started as protection, real protection, not extortion. I made sure no other kid would watch his father burn. Dohyun stood, pacing to the window. Then it grew. More territory, more operations, more violence. The Yakuza approached me to launder their money. The Bratva wanted access to my ports. The cartels needed distribution networks. By the time I was 25, I was too deep to walk away even if I wanted to. There's always a choice. Is there? He turned back to her. Walk away, and my organization fractures. The territory wars would kill hundreds. My enemies would torture everyone close to me, including the people who depend on me for protection. His expression was bleak. I'm not a good man, Ms. Wilson, but I'm the best option this city has in the criminal underworld. Without me, something worse fills the vacuum. Michaela wanted to hate him. Wanted to see only the criminal, the kidnapper, the man who'd ordered people killed. But she was starting to understand that Park Dohyun was trapped in his own kind of prison, built from violence, obligation, and the ghost of a dead father. The hearing, she said quietly. What happened? Postponed until next week. Your firm filed an emergency motion. Dohyun moved closer. Which means I need to figure out what to do with you. My partners are getting impatient. They want proof you've been handled. Fear spiked through her. Meaning what? Meaning I may need to stage your death. Make it look convincing enough to satisfy them, while actually keeping you alive and hidden. He crouched down, his dark eyes intense. But that only works if you cooperate. If you fight me, if you try to escape, I won't be able to protect you from them. Protect me? You kidnapped me. To save your life. For the first time, real emotion cracked through his controlled facade. You think I wanted this? I'm trying to navigate between my criminal partners who want you dead, my legitimate business interests that need Henderson Heights, and the fact that killing an idealistic young lawyer would— He stopped abruptly. Would what? Would bother me more than it should, he finished quietly. The admission hung between them. Michaela stared at him, this dangerous man who commanded an army of criminals, who'd built an empire on blood and money, who was looking at her now like she was a problem he couldn't solve. I don't understand you, she said finally. That makes two of us. Dohyun stood, his professional mask sliding back into place. Eat. Rest. And think about whether you'd rather trust me or take your chances with my partners. Because those are your only options. He left, and Michaela sat alone with food she didn't want and thoughts that spiraled in directions she'd never expected. By the 5th day, Michaela had learned the rhythm of her captivity. The guards changed shifts every 8 hours, professionals who never spoke, never showed emotion, but whose weapons were always visible. Dohyun appeared twice daily, bringing food and conversation that grew less adversarial and more something else. She'd learned that he played piano, classical pieces he'd learned from his mother before she died of cancer they couldn't afford to treat. That he'd studied architecture but had been forced to abandon those dreams when his father was murdered. That he sometimes woke from nightmares about the first person he'd killed, a man twice his age who'd begged for mercy Dohyun hadn't given. You could still walk away, Michaela said one evening as they sat in his living room, the city glittering below them. Cooperate with the FBI, testify against your partners. And everyone I've ever protected would be slaughtered as a message. My organization's territory would become a war zone. The violence I've contained would explode across the entire city. Dohyun was sketching something, architectural drawings, she realized, of buildings that would never be built. I'm not a hero, Michaela. I can't be redeemed with a grand gesture. It was the first time he'd used her first name. She noticed but didn't comment. What about Henderson Heights? She asked instead. Is it really necessary? For your operations? He was quiet for a long moment, his pen still on the paper. The truth? The location is perfect for distribution, but not irreplaceable. There are other options. He looked up, meeting her eyes. But my partners have invested money in the Azure Sky Tower project. They're expecting returns. If I back out now, they'll see it as weakness. And weakness gets you killed. Weakness gets everyone around me killed. That's how this works. Dohyun set down his pen. 6 months ago, a rival syndicate made a move on my territory. They kidnapped 3 of my men. To maintain my position, I had to respond with overwhelming force. We wiped out their entire operation, 27 people dead in one night. Michaela felt sick. 27 people. 27 soldiers who would have started a war that would have killed hundreds. Who would have flooded the neighborhoods I control with drugs, forced children into trafficking, turned my territory into hell. His voice was flat, factual. I'm not asking you to approve of what I do, Michaela. I'm trying to make you understand why I can't simply choose to be better. Everyone has a choice, she insisted. Do they? What about Chef Min? Does he have a choice when his daughter's life depends on my continued success? What about the families in my territory who would be victimized by worse criminals if I fail? What about you? Do you have a choice right now? The words hit harder than she wanted to admit. She thought about her grandmother, about the subtle protection that had always surrounded Henderson Heights. The way crime seemed to stop at the neighborhood boundaries. The dealers who never came around. The way disputes were settled quietly, without police involvement. You've been protecting Henderson Heights, she realized slowly. All these years. That's why my grandmother felt safe there. Dohyun nodded. The park organization doesn't operate in residential neighborhoods under our protection. No drugs, no violence, no exploitation. It's one of my few rules. But now you're going to destroy it. Now I'm trapped between conflicting obligations. He stood, pacing. My partners want their money laundering tower. My organization needs to maintain its reputation for following through. But you've made me see. He stopped, running a hand through his hair. You've made me question things I stopped questioning years ago. Michaela stood too, moving closer. Then help me find another way. You're brilliant, Dohyun. I can see it in these drawings, in how you've built your organization. Use that intelligence to find a solution that doesn't destroy people's homes. My partners won't accept. Your partners aren't here right now. I am. And I'm telling you, there's always another way if you're brave enough to look for it. She touched his arm, feeling him tense. You said you're not a good man. Maybe you're right. But you could choose to be better. Starting now. Starting with Henderson Heights. He looked down at her hand on his arm, then at her face. Something shifted in his expression, vulnerability she hadn't seen before. You really believe that, don't you? That people can change. I believe you already have. You changed your mind about killing me. You're protecting me from your partners. You're questioning orders you would have followed blindly a month ago. She stepped closer. The man who burned down your father's office. You killed him because you believed in justice, even if you pursued it outside the law. That instinct is still there. Dohyun. I can see it. What if it's too late? What if I've done too much, gone too far? Then you start from where you are. You can't undo the past, but you can choose your next step. Michaela held his gaze. Help me save Henderson Heights. Find a way to satisfy your partners without destroying that community. Prove that you're more than just another criminal who follows orders out of fear. For a long moment, they stood close enough that she could feel his breath, see the conflict playing out behind his eyes. Then he did something that shocked her. He pulled her into an embrace, his arms wrapping around her like she was a lifeline. I don't know if I can, he whispered against her hair. I don't know if I'm strong enough to fight my own organization. Michaela held him, this dangerous man who'd kidnapped her, who'd killed and commanded and built an empire on blood. And she realized with startling clarity that she was falling for him, not despite who he was, but because of the man he was trying to become. Then we'll figure it out together, she said quietly. But you have to be willing to try. He pulled back just enough to look at her, and she saw in his eyes something fragile and terrifying. Hope. What do you think? Can people change from being bad to good? Let me know in the comments below. The next 3 days were a dangerous dance. Dohyun spread architectural drawings across his dining table, but these weren't just building plans, they were strategy sessions for restructuring his entire operation. If we modify the Azure Sky Tower design, he said, sketching rapidly, we can still accommodate the distribution center my partners need while preserving Henderson Heights. The mixed-income housing on the lower floors gives us legitimate traffic to mask our operations. We integrate the existing buildings instead of demolishing them. Michaela leaned over the drawings, her mind racing. Your partners want money laundering capacity. The construction phase itself can serve that purpose. Inflated contracts, phantom labor costs, the usual methods. And the legitimate mixed income aspect provides tax benefits that offset some of their expected returns. Dohyun looked at her with something like admiration. You understand the mechanisms of financial crime remarkably well for a housing lawyer. I spent 6 months studying your organization's methods. I know exactly how you hide money in construction projects. She met his eyes. The question is whether your partners will accept modified returns for reduced risk. They'll accept what I present as inevitable. The FBI investigation into the original Azure Sky project was too close. Your injunction drew attention we can't afford. Pivoting to a mixed-use development with community support gives us cover. His expression was calculating, the crime boss emerging. But I'll need to make an example somewhere else. Show strength to compensate for this appearance of compromise. The casual way he discussed violence made her stomach turn. What kind of example? The Russian Bratva has been pushing into my port territory. We've been planning a response anyway. If I time it with the Henderson Heights announcement, it demonstrates that backing down on one front doesn't mean weakness overall. He noticed her expression. You're about to tell me that's still wrong. I'm about to tell you that you're trading one group of lives for another. Yes, that's exactly what I'm doing. Dohyun's voice was hard. This is the reality of my world, Michaela. I can't simply become a good man because you want me to. The best I can offer is harm reduction. Save Henderson Heights, but maintain my organization's position through violence elsewhere. And if I can't accept that compromise? Then Henderson Heights gets demolished, you stay my prisoner, and nothing changes except we both feel worse about it. He moved closer, his hand cupping her face. I'm trying, Michaela. This is me trying. But I can't transform into someone I'm not. She wanted to pull away, to reject the moral calculus of choosing which communities suffered. But she was trapped in her own impossible situation, accept partial victory or lose everything. Tell me about the Bratva operation, she said finally. What are you planning? Dohyun studied her face, searching for something. You don't want to know the details. If I'm complicit in this compromise, I need to understand what it costs. He was quiet for a long moment, then nodded slowly. The Bratva runs human trafficking through the ports. Women, mostly, brought over on shipping containers, forced into prostitution or domestic slavery. My organization has maintained a strict prohibition on human trafficking in our territory, but the Russians see our ports as an opportunity. Michaela felt sick. So you're going to eliminate their trafficking operation, kill their leadership, free the women they're holding, and send a message that human trafficking brings death in my territory. His voice was cold, professional. It's not altruism, Michaela. It's business. Trafficking draws federal attention I don't want, and it's morally repugnant even by criminal standards. But yes, the operation will be violent, and yes, people will die. People who deserve it. Does anyone deserve death? You're the one who believes in redemption and second chances. He pulled back, turning toward the window. This is who I am. I'm offering you a devil's bargain. Save your community by accepting that I'll spill blood elsewhere. If you can't live with that, tell me now. Michaela thought about her grandmother, about the 73 families, about the children who would be displaced versus the women who would be freed from slavery. The moral mathematics were impossible, unacceptable, and yet she found herself nodding. Okay. Okay. Dohyun turned back, surprise clear on his face. If you're going to raid a trafficking operation anyway, then it's not about Henderson Heights. You're not trading innocent lives for innocent lives. She struggled with the words. You're doing something that needs to be done while also saving my community. That's not the same as ordering violence just to save face. That's a very fine distinction. It's the distinction between you being completely irredeemable and you being someone who might, eventually, find his way out of this life. Michaela moved to stand beside him. I can't approve of your methods, Dohyun, but I can acknowledge that in your world, this might be the best option available. He looked at her for a long moment, something like wonder in his expression. You're either the bravest person I've ever met or the most foolish. Probably both. She managed a weak smile. Now show me how we're going to present this to your partners without getting us both killed. The planning continued through the night. Dohyun made calls in languages she didn't speak, Korean, Russian, Japanese, his voice shifting from persuasive to threatening to coldly professional. She heard him orchestrate the Bratva raid, coordinate the architectural changes, manage the dozens of moving pieces required to restructure a criminal empire while maintaining control. By dawn, she understood exactly how dangerous he was, and how remarkable it was that he was willing to change at all. They've agreed, he said finally, setting down his phone. My partners will accept the modified Azure Sky plan. The Bratva raid happens tomorrow night, and by the time Henderson Heights goes before the judge next week, it'll be with a completely different proposal. And me? Michaela asked quietly. You're free to go. Whenever you want. Dohyun moved closer. But I'm hoping you'll stay. Help me present this to your community. Make sure I don't fuck it up by saying something that reveals what I really am. They'll research you. They'll know you're connected to organized crime. They'll know I'm a developer with rumored underworld connections. There's a difference. As long as the proposal benefits them legitimately, most people don't ask too many questions about the money behind it. His hand found hers. But you're right, I'll need you there to keep me honest. To make sure I follow through on every promise. Michaela looked at their joined hands, then at his face. When had this become more than captor and captive? When had she started caring about this man who'd kidnapped her, who killed people, who ran a criminal empire? I don't hate you, she said softly. I should. By every moral standard I have, I absolutely should. But I don't. You see something in me I'm not sure exists anymore. Dohyun's voice was rough. Something better than what I've become. I see someone trying. That's more than most people manage. She stepped closer. But Dohyun, I need you to understand. If you hurt my community, if you break your promises, if you use this development to bring crime into Henderson Heights, I'll destroy you. I'll find every piece of evidence I've gathered, I'll work with the FBI, I'll tear down everything you've built. Instead of being insulted or threatened, he smiled. I expected nothing less. You're not just accepting this compromise, You're putting me on notice.
Exactly.
He pulled her closer, his forehead resting against hers. I'm going to disappoint you eventually. Fall back into old patterns, make choices you can't accept. Then I'll fight you on them. We'll argue, we'll clash, and you'll either listen or I'll walk away. Michaela met his eyes. This isn't me accepting who you are, Dohyun. This is me giving you a chance to become who you could be. But you have to choose it every day. What if I choose wrong?
Then at least you'll have tried.
She touched his face, feeling the thin scar on his jaw. The man who burned down your father's office died years ago. You can't undo that violence. But you can honor your father's memory by building something that actually matters. Not a criminal empire, a real legacy. When he kissed her, it tasted like desperation and hope in equal measure. Michaela kissed him back, knowing she was crossing a line she couldn't uncross, binding herself to a man who lived in shadows and blood. But she'd seen the person beneath the killer, and she couldn't unsee it. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Dohyun managed a shaky laugh. A week ago, I kidnapped you. Now I'm fairly certain I'm falling in love with you. That can't be healthy. It's completely insane. Michaela smiled despite everything. But I'm not running away yet, so I guess we're both insane.
Together.
His voice was uncertain, hopeful in a way that made her heart ache. Together, she confirmed. But one condition, if you ever kill someone who doesn't deserve it, if you cross lines even I can't rationalize, we're done. I won't love a monster, Dohyun.
Only the man trying not to become one. That's more than I deserve.
He held her tighter. But I'll take it.
And I'll try to be worthy of it.
They stood there in his penthouse as dawn broke over the city, two people from different worlds who'd found an impossible connection in the space between crime and redemption. The path ahead would be dangerous, complicated, built on compromises that would haunt them both. But for now, in this moment, it was enough to simply hold each other and hope that love could be stronger than the blood on his hands. Thank you for making it this far. If you haven't yet, please like and subscribe. Tell us what you think about the story in the comments below. The community meeting was packed. Every resident of Henderson Heights had crammed into the community room, along with local council members and media representatives.
Michaela stood at the front of the room, very aware of the weight of dozens of eyes on her.
Her grandmother sat in the front row, arms crossed, her expression skeptical. Dohyun had wanted to come, but Michaela had convinced him otherwise. Let me present it first, she'd said. You showing up will raise too many questions about where I've been. Let me handle the community, then you can make an appearance once they're open to listening. Now, facing the people she'd fought for, Michaela felt the full weight of the compromise she'd made.
Thank you all for coming, she began.
I know you have questions about the emergency that took me away last week, and I appreciate your patience. But I'm here today because I've negotiated something I think will change everything.
She unrolled the architectural drawings and watched as curiosity replaced some of the suspicion in the room.
The design was beautiful. Henderson Heights preserved and renovated, integrated into a larger complex that clearly served the entire community. This is a revised proposal from Dohyun Development Corporation. Instead of demolishing Henderson Heights, they're proposing a mixed-use development that preserves and renovates the existing buildings while adding new construction around them.
Why the change?
Mrs. Rodriguez called out.
Last we heard, they wanted us gone.
Because I made them understand what they'd be destroying, Michaela said carefully. And because they realized there's more value, and frankly better publicity, in creating something that serves the community rather than displacing it. She walked them through the details. Renovated units with guaranteed rent control, long-term leases with legal protections, mixed-income housing in the new tower, community spaces including a health clinic and childcare facility.
Everything she and Dohyun had planned, presented as a legitimate business proposal with no hint of the criminal machinations behind it.
The contracts will be ironclad, Michaela continued. I'll be drafting them myself, with enforcement mechanisms and community board oversight. Every promise made today will be legally binding. And what about Park Dohyun? Someone called from the back. Everyone knows he's connected. How do we know this isn't just money laundering dressed up as charity? Michaela had prepared for this question. Park Dohyun is a businessman with a complicated reputation. But this project will have full transparency in its financing. Independent auditors, community oversight, regular reporting. If there's anything illegal happening, it'll be obvious. It wasn't the full truth, but it was enough truth to be believable. The community didn't need to know about the criminal empire behind the development, they just needed to know their homes would be protected. The meeting lasted 3 hours. There were hard questions, legitimate concerns, and heated debate. But slowly, grudgingly, the mood began to shift from hostile to cautiously optimistic. A committee was formed to review the detailed contracts. A timeline was established for renovations. When people began filing out, Michaela's grandmother stayed behind. She waited until they were alone, then fixed her granddaughter with a look that had made Michaela confess to broken vases and skipped homework as a child. "What really happened last week?" she asked quietly. Michaela had known this was coming. "I can't tell you everything, Grandma. But I can tell you I'm safe, I made the right choice, and Henderson Heights is protected." "That's not an answer. It's the only answer I can give." Michaela took her grandmother's hands. "Some things are better left unsaid. Just trust that I know what I'm doing." Her grandmother studied her face for a long moment. "You met with him, didn't you? With Park Dohyun. Not just a business meeting, something more." "Grandma, I've lived a long time, child. I know what it looks like when a woman has spent time with a dangerous man and come away changed." Her grip tightened. "Is he good to you?" The question surprised Michaela into honesty. "He's trying to be." "That's not the same as being good." "No. But it's something." Michaela met her grandmother's eyes. "And it's enough for now." Her grandmother sighed, a sound heavy with worry and reluctant acceptance. "Just promise me you know what you're getting into. Men like that, men with that kind of power, they don't change easily." "I know. But I also know he's trying. And I'm not naive enough to think it'll be easy." Michaela squeezed her grandmother's hands. "Trust me. Always. Even when I think you're being foolish." She pulled Michaela into a hug. "Just be careful. And if he ever hurts you, you'll make him regret it." "I know." Michaela smiled against her grandmother's shoulder. "I love you, Grandma." "I love you too, child. Now go." "I'm sure he's waiting to hear how it went." Dohyun was pacing his penthouse when Michaela arrived. He turned as she entered, his expression tense. "Well?" They agreed to review the proposal. A committee will examine the contracts, but the mood was positive by the end. Michaela set down her bag. "We did it, Dohyun. They're going to accept it." Relief washed over his face, and he pulled her into his arms. "You did it. I would have made them suspicious just by showing up." "You would have," Michaela agreed, her voice muffled against his chest. "My grandmother already suspects something happened between us." "What did you tell her?" "The truth, that some things are better left unsaid." She pulled back to look at him. "This is how it has to be, Dohyun. The world can't know about the kidnapping, about your organization's real operations, about any of it. We present a clean face to the public, and whatever happens behind the scenes stays there." "I know." His hand cupped her face. "It means living a double life. Keeping secrets from everyone, including your family." "I made my choice." Michaela's voice was firm. "I went into this knowing what it would cost. I can live with secrets if it means protecting my community and helping you become better. And if someone finds out, if the FBI connects the dots, then we deal with it. But until then, we're just a lawyer and a developer who found a mutually beneficial solution to a legal dispute." She managed a smile. "It's not even that far from the truth." Dohyun kissed her, soft and grateful. "I don't deserve you." "Probably not. But you're going to spend a long time trying to." Michaela rested her forehead against his. "Starting with keeping every promise you made in that proposal. I wasn't lying about those contracts being ironclad." "I wouldn't expect anything less." He pulled her toward the couch. "Come on. Tell me everything, every question, every concern, every detail. I want to know exactly what we're committing to." They spent the rest of the evening going through the meeting point by point, planning their next moves, discussing how to structure the contracts to provide maximum protection for the community while still serving Dohyun's business needs. It was a delicate balance, walking the line between legitimate development and criminal enterprise, but they were learning how to navigate it together. Later, as they stood at the window looking out over the city, Michaela thought about the choices that had brought them here. The kidnapping that should have been the end, but had instead been a beginning. The criminal empire that was slowly, carefully shifting toward legitimacy. The love that had grown in the space between right and wrong, built on compromise and hope. "What are you thinking?" Dohyun asked, his arm around her waist. "That 6 months ago, if someone had told me I'd be standing here with you, planning our future together, I would have said they were insane." She leaned into him. And I'd have been right. This is insane. But it's also real, and it's ours, and I wouldn't change it. Even knowing what I am. What I've done.
Even knowing that.
She turned to face him. You're not defined by your worst actions, Dohyun. You're defined by what you choose to do next. And right now, you're choosing to build something good. That matters. What if I fail? What if I disappoint you? Then we'll fight about it, and you'll do better, and we'll keep moving forward. Michaela touched his face. That's what love is, not expecting perfection, but believing in someone's ability to grow.
He kissed her again, deeper this time, full of gratitude and promise and the tentative hope of a man learning to believe he could be more than his past.
6 months, he murmured. After Henderson Heights is completed, after I've proven I can keep my word, ask me then what you want from me, and I'll give you anything.
I'll hold you to that.
Michaela smiled.
But I already know what I'll ask for.
What? This. Us. Every day, choosing each other despite the impossibility of it all.
She rested her head on his shoulder.
That's all I want. Everything else, the compromises, the secrets, the complications, I can handle as long as we're facing them together.
Together, Dohyun agreed, holding her close. For as long as you'll have me.
If you enjoyed this story, please like and subscribe. We post new stories every week, so don't miss out on new updates. Thank you for watching.